This week's grammar practice is about conciseness and clarity. These are two skills that you want to make sure that you have in your writing, but these are also two skills that are going to be tested on benchmark as well as ACT. So it's important for you to know what they mean and how to select the options that are the most concise and clear. Concise means essentially short and sweet. Keep it short and sweet. Clarity means make sure that it's easy to understand, that it's clear to the reader what you mean. So when you're looking at a conciseness and clarity question on the benchmark, it's going to look like a sentence that has four different options, and the only difference in the four options is the order of the words. And you might not really understand exactly what you're looking at when you're looking at this, and you're just reading them and thinking, okay, which one makes the most sense? But when we're talking about conciseness and clarity, there are really two grammar skills that are at stake here. So we're going to talk about two specific grammar skills that are involved in answering this type of question on the benchmarks, the EOC, and the ACT. And the first skill is using active voice versus passive voice. So I think we've talked about this in class this year. But essentially, active voice is when you're writing a sentence and the subject of the sentence is performing the action. This is the way we normally speak. We normally speak in sentences where the subject is performing an action. However, sometimes people speak in passive voice, either on purpose or on accident, and that is when the subject of the sentence is not performing the action, but is receiving the action, or an action is being done to it. So let me give you two simple examples. If I gave you the sentence, the dog wagged its tail. Dog is the subject, wagged is the verb. The dog is performing the action of the sentence, the dog wagged. But if I used passive voice to say the same thing, it's less clear. The tail was wagged by the dog. It sounds weird. And so in that case, the tail is receiving the action of being wagged, which is a weird way to say it. And sometimes we speak in passive voice and we write in passive voice and we don't realize it. Sometimes there is a need for passive voice. Like, for example, if you're writing science reports, I believe that you're expected to use passive voice primarily in those. But in most types of writing, you want to tend to use active voice primarily. So what does this look like on a benchmark or an EOC or an ACT? So the question says, what change, if any, should be made to the sentence? The magazine is read by 200 people each month. Well, this is passive voice because the subject, magazine, is receiving an action. It is read. The magazine isn't reading. It is being read. So I need to change the word order of this entire sentence to fit it into active voice. So the answer choice that does that is answer choice A. 200 people read the magazine each month. It has the same information, but answer A is much more clear than the example at the top. People is the subject. Read is the verb. People are doing the action of reading. Here's another example. The baseball was hit out of the park by the player. Again, the baseball is receiving the action of being hit. It is not hitting itself. So we need to change the word order of the sentence. Who or what in this sentence is hitting? So if you ask yourself that question, who or what is doing the action? It's actually the player that's hitting something. So I need to find the answer choice that puts the player beside the verb hit. The player hit the ball over the fence. Answer choice B is much more clear, and the reason it is more clear is because it is written in active voice. The second thing that we're looking at in conciseness and clarity types of questions is modifiers. So modifiers are words or phrases that change the meaning of another word in the sentence, either by adding details or adding more descriptions. So a modifier can be simply an adjective. An adjective adds detail or changes the meaning of a noun. So an adjective is a type of modifier. But what we're talking about specifically here is modifying phrases. And modifying phrases typically are going to start with an ing or ed word. So think like a verb with an ing or an ed after it, and then a string of words after that ing or ed word. These are called modifying phrases. Modifying phrases come either right before or right after a noun that follows the modifying phrase. And that noun is what the modifying phrase is describing. So, when the order is messed up, when the modifier is not beside, either right before or right after, the noun that it is describing, then it is called a misplaced modifier. So in this example question, the first part of the sentence is actually the modifier, even though it's not the underlined part. The underlined part is the part that we would have to change if this is a misplaced modifier. But let's look at the opening phrase. Notice that the first word is an ed word, like I mentioned. Covered in flowers and colorful paper. Okay, so the first noun after this is what should be covered in flowers and colorful paper. Well, the first noun after this is the planner, talking about the wedding planner. The wedding planner is not covered in flowers and colorful paper. What's covered in flowers and colorful paper? It's the venue. So the venue should be up here. So I need to choose the answer choice that has venue before any other noun. So I'm going to choose D, option D. Covered in flowers and colorful paper, the venue had been transformed into something magical by the wedding planner. So this puts the modifier and the word that is being modified beside each other for more clarity. By the way, if you're listening to this video and not skipping ahead, this is the answer to the next question, unicorn. Number 2, what change, if any, should be made to the sentence to correct any misplaced modifiers? So actually, this first phrase right here is the modifier bolted. That's an ed word, and then a string of words after it. This is a modifying phrase. Who or what is bolted to the top of a high skyscraper? Well, the noun that's after it is tourists. Common sense says the tourists are not bolted to the top of a high skyscraper. It's actually the observation deck. So I need to put observation deck up here. So I need to change the wording of the underlined portion to put the word that is being modified beside the modifier. So I would choose answer G. The observation deck gives tourists. So that's a quick review on active voice and passive voice. So think about those two things. One, make sure that you choose a sentence that is written in active voice where the subject is performing the action. And number 2, choose the sentence that has the modifiers beside the correct noun that is supposed to be modified. That will help you to choose the best answer in questions like this. And certainly the one that makes the most sense and that sounds like the normal way to say it is probably going to be the correct answer, but you can't always go by that. It's better to know your grammar rules and guidelines for that to make sure that you are selecting the correct answer. That's how you do these questions. And if you've made it this far, here is the answer to the next question, Hamlet. Thanks for listening. You will have a grammar quiz on Friday.